Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this episode of Long Range Noob, the podcast for people new to long range shooting, brought to you by people new to long range shooting. I'm your co-host, Jace Leroy, and alongside me, as always, is Ryan. He's always locked out of something, Danowski.
Hello, hello.
Hello, hello. Ryan also got a new truck this week.
I did.
Is that right?
Yeah, and new is a relative term. New to me.
New to you.
So yeah.
You got.
So it's 15 years old, but it's it's a go-getter.
He put all sadness in the garage, never to return. Poor truck. Well, we got a fun little show lined up here. It's going to be all about scopes, optics, and we're happy to. I think we're setting a record for the quickest turnaround time. From one episode to the next, so we're going to try to keep that up best we can. Let's see, Ryan. Let's start it off with. I lost my notes. I had them.
Scopes.
Scopes. Let's talk about the thing that confused me the most, and that's the front or first focal planes. Yes. So you have your. Front or first, I don't really know which is correct, but FFP, which most people refer to as first focal plane, versus second focal plane. Do you want to tell me in your own words what those two things are?
Oh, I'd love to. Let's start with second focal plane. And second focal plane is probably what you would usually see in like a cheaper scope or older scopes. It's kind of how they originally were designed. The key with difference between the two are that the reticle will actually, as you zoom in, it'll either grow with the zoom or it'll just stay the same size. And second focal plane is where the reticle will just stay the same size relative to your zoom. So you're at like a 3x, on a 3x9, and your crosshair looks like a crosshair, and then you zoom in, and your crosshair does not change at all. It still keeps its same size and shape, basically.
Okay.
Yeah. And the the first focal plane, your crosshair will actually grow, or you'll zoom into your crosshair as well as the target, whatever you're looking at.
Yeah.
So, and both of those kind of have some pros and cons. So, I don't know. Did you want to talk about kind of the pros and cons?
Yeah. So, sorry, my throat's a little jacked up tonight. So, the way I understand it is. The benefit of first focal plane, and maybe it was developed or designed for more tactical situations, in that your subtensions, or let's say you have a standard crosshair with mil dots. Say you got 5 mil dots on that crosshair in a single focal or first focal plane. Those mil dots are going to be accurate on every magnification. So on a second focal plane, so kind of the old style, that crosshair would only be accurate on one magnification, and it's probably going to be whatever the max magnification is. So if it's if it's a 6 to 24 power, it's probably only going to be accurate at 24 in terms of measuring, because that reticle is always the same size. Whereas with the first focal plane, when you look at it under low magnification, say at a 6, it's your crosshair is it's going to be kind of hard to see in a way, because it's going to be so small. And then maxed out to your 24, so they have to make the reticle really small on the lower end. Otherwise, when you zoomed in, it would be so huge it'd be useless. So, so that seems to be, to me, the only and main benefit of first focal plane versus second focal plane is that measurements in the glass are going to be accurate with a first focal plane at
every time.
any magnification, and single focal plane only at 1 magnification.
Yeah, now that's not to say for the second focal plane that those measurements aren't going to be usable. So say, like you said, you have a 24x scope, and at 24x, you have 1 mil dots, and those are accurate to 1 mil. Now, if you zoom out, say to 12x, which is half the zoom.
Oh, I see. You can do a little
now
math.
you do a little math in your head,
Gross.
and I know. And now your 1 mil dots, they haven't changed in size or shape, but now they're 2 mils instead of 1 mil because you have half the magnification, and so those now become 2.
Okay.
Yeah. And so you can use them. You just have to kind of think about it in your head. Now, if you try to do that same thing with a first focal plane, or front focal plane, whichever it might be, you might zoom out, and those dots, because they're shrinking as you're zooming out, and they're still going to be 1 mil, but they might be so tiny by the time you zoom out to 12x or even 6x, that they might not even be usable at all. So you have to kind of think about your application, and what am I going to use this for? Am I going to want to have kind of accuracy everywhere? Am I going to want to have kind of my full range of visibility and be able to use those mil dots? I don't know. You just kind of have to think about what you want to do with them. So I personally, prefer first focal plane. Most of my time on a scope like that, we're talking about long range shooting. So lots of time we're at, if not at maximum magnification, close to. I believe my scope goes up to 21x. So most of the time I'll spend it in between 12 and 21, somewhere in that region. So and usually there, my the visibility of the mil dot measurements, is good enough that I can see them clearly. But I know if I zoom out all the way to 3.5x, which is where that scope starts, there's no way I can tell each individual little mils or subtensions even from each other. So it's just too small. So
well, and you've got a pretty specific reticle in yours that we'll talk about here in a little while. That's generally known as being a lot busier than
your average reticle.
Than an average, crosshair with some mil dots on it. But I'm not sold for me on spending the extra money for first focal plane, simply because so far I've never used it. I've never used first focal plane for what. I've never measured a target. I've never used it to distance anything.
Every once in a while I'll kind of play with it, and like, oh, I'm gonna do this target.
And I think that could be a really valuable skill to learn.
Oh, sure.
And you can learn it on a second focal plane as well, like we talked about, either at max magnification or using just like fractions and doing a little math. So I think it's a great skill to learn, but in terms of
are you going to do it?
Maybe. Paying that extra money, because it's generally quite a bit more expensive to go from a single focal plane up to a first focal plane.
Usually a couple $100 if you have two comparable scopes that are same brand,
same everything,
and one's first and one's second. Usually it's like $200 or $300.
Yeah, because mine, I have the Steiner that's first focal plane, and before that I had the Vortex Viper HSLR. And I love both scopes, but I'm so far, I know that there's some competition shooting out there that requires that you don't use a rangefinder. So
that could be helpful.
That could be helpful. I bet that's huge for people that own first focal plane scopes. You probably almost have to have one to compete in something like that and do really well. So that's your first focal plane versus second focal planes, and those are kind of the things you got to weigh in on that. And then
Yeah. Now, one other thing I wanted to touch on is some people. We were at Shields the other day, and for example, me and Jace.
for anyone who doesn't know what Shields is, it's a what would you call it? Just a sporting goods store?
Kind of like a Cabela's.
For those of you who don't know what a Cabela's is, it's...
If you don't know what a Cabela's is, you should not be listening
That's not true. Podcast. We're not sponsored by Cabela's or Shields.
Or Shields, anyone. But yeah,
basically your standard outdoors store.
Yeah.
So sorry about that. Proceed.
Big store. It has a Ferris wheel in it. It's actually
it actually
cool.
does have a Ferris wheel in it.
Yeah.
And a fish tank with a man swimming around inside of it.
We got a picture of that.
Actually, there's a little sidetrack,
off
but
topic.
Apparently the guy who builds those fish tanks and cleans them, we posted a picture to our Instagram of this. He was in a scuba suit inside the fish tank cleaning it, and this isn't like your standard fish tank. It's like a pillar, so it's like a big round pillar. Yeah, I don't know how else to describe it. So
Glass
anyway,
pillar.
He was in there cleaning it. Apparently he's a member of LRSU, Long Range Shooters of Utah. Facebook page, so shout out to that guy if he's listening to us.
Right.
Again, sorry to derail you.
Yeah, but anyway, so we were talking about, I believe, his Night Force scope that he had, and how it was second focal plane.
Yeah.
And he liked it because because you're between magnifications, your reticle is always the same.
Mm-hmm.
At max magnification, your reticle doesn't grow so much as to cover up your target.
Yeah, I guess
I've never had a problem with that.
Maybe there's some focal plane scopes out there that when you're at max magnification, your reticle gets really big and can kind of cover your target up. If you're trying to shoot, say, a coyote or just a steel target or something that's out there quite a ways. But mine's got such a fine crosshair, my Steiner, that even at max zoom, it looks like a normal second focal plane reticle to me, or even finer. So, and like you said, you've never had a problem with that, but that is something to probably look at if you're looking at a scope, is to max it out and look through it and see if the reticle grows too much for your taste or for the type of shooting you're going to be doing.
Right.
For sure. And while we're on that subject, we can talk about there are scopes out there that are fixed magnifications. And what do you think's the biggest benefit over getting a fixed versus a variable?
Oh, definitely cost.
Yeah, I think we agree on that.
There's an SWFA. SWAFA.
Yeah, I don't know.
That I think it's their Super Sniper scope. I believe. I think it's a fixed 10x.
Yeah.
And I think that's the brand.
I think it is. I know for a fact that SWFA makes what you're talking about. A really, really popular. They make a handful of them, but very popular fixed scopes. Fixed power. And 10 is a very popular focal
magnification.
length.
Or for that, for a fixed. Just because it can kind of do everything a little bit. But anyways, so your fixed scopes are definitely going to be less expensive. A lot of times, you can get a fixed scope with really nice glass in it, good quality glass for a lot less than something that's a variable magnification.
As soon as they put that variable knob on your scope, it goes up $1,000 in price. And so it's basically
maybe not 1,000.
Well, you can get an SWFA for $300.
Oh sure,
no problem. But then you get
glass.
something that's 6 to 24. All of a sudden, it's $1,000 to $1,500.
Oh sure,
and that's with okay glass. If you want to get really good glass, you got to go up, even higher. So it's amazing how much cheaper the fixed scopes are, and you still get really, really good glass. So whatever elements they use inside of a scope to make the variable zoom, which I'm sure requires extra glass elements and moving parts and all of the fun stuff. And I think also they know that most people want it.
Right.
It's a supply and demand thing. Most people don't want a fixed scope because everybody shooting brings up a lot of different situations, and a lot of different situations are going to require different magnifications.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that's why the 10 and 12s fixed are pretty popular because they
Yeah, it's not too much, and it's not. It's
yeah,
kind of that happy medium.
you can do some closer medium stuff and further out stuff. I
Mm-hmm.
know a lot of people have no problem shooting 1,000 with 10 fixed and do very
Mm-hmm.
well with them. Um,
Yeah, I mean, I hear in uh, the military, in the Vietnam era especially, they had their standard scope that they issued was like a 10x fixed.
yeah,
And that's all they used. So, and they would hit targets out to 1,000 yards, and you know, usually that's a man-sized target, but
yeah. We're
you
not
know,
talking shooting a tiny
10-inch
group or
plate.
anything, but
Yeah,
I'm sure there are
but
people out there who
you
run
do it.
a 10x and do way better than I ever could.
Oh yeah, with iron sights,
With whatever.
yeah, whatever.
Um, Also, something that goes into cost is the amount of zoom, obviously. So, your 3 to 9s seem to be much, much more affordable than your 6 to 24s or your 6 to 21s or whatever the range is there.
Yeah.
Mine's a 5 to 25, which is, I don't know of any other scope manufacturers that do that range. Um, but it seems like they get quite a bit more expensive, which is something that I'm very familiar with is lenses for cameras. So it's the same there. Generally, the really high end zoom lenses can be quite expensive. Um, so
Yeah,
that's
with good quality.
yeah, definitely. We're talking good quality versus good quality here, and we can even talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, let's
I think
talk
most
about
people
glass
know
quality.
that not all scopes are the same when it comes to quality of glass.
Hmm.
And what to you, Ryan? What when you pick up a scope, what to you says like, oh, hey, this is a quality scope versus, oh, this is pretty junky.
Um, well, one thing I usually look for immediately is how much light does it let in. Is it a bright image? Um, can you see? I mean, that's your whole
I
point
like
here.
that standard. Can I
You
see
see
through this
can you
scope?
see through the scope? So yeah, clarity of the scope. How's the resolution? Um, can I make out fine details
Mm-hmm.
in things that are far away that I'm looking at? Um, and that's kind of a real price thing right there. You'll be surprised at how much, like you might have like a low end, 4 to 14x scope versus like a high end 4 to 14x scope, and you're like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, there's the same magnification. What's the difference? And just like
Yeah, that's very true.
the clarity and like the resolution of the picture, the brightness of the picture. Even when you're getting into dusk, it's towards sort of settings.
Mm-hmm.
Is it still going to be able to be bright enough to see with? One thing that you definitely kind of you have to look at is your eye box. On max magnification, how much wiggle room do you have to move your head about?
Yeah.
Or does it like immediately go dark as soon as you're slightly off target? Um, let's see.
That's something I've noticed a lot with
Yeah.
scopes, and something that I personally really enjoy, and I'm sure everybody enjoys a wide field of view, or not the wide field of view, but a big
Well, that too.
eye box. So,
Yeah.
like you said, the tolerance in which you can move your eye around and still see the full picture without getting black edges or just blackness. Um, if a scope has a pretty big eye box, that immediately kind of attracts me to looking into it even more.
Mm-hmm. And sometimes, with some scopes, as you increase magnification, especially at the top end of its
Mm-hmm.
magnification, you might start to see a diminishment of quality um, in the image.
Yeah, I think that's going to be the case with any.
Yeah.
It's just like, CSI Miami when they zoom in on a picture.
Just like that.
Except on that show, it gets better. Whereas in real life, if you're zooming into something, at least it's optical zoom, so it's not going to be like a digital image and get like pixelated, but it'll have, like Ryan's explaining, it'll have a diminishment in the image quality, so the edges will become fuzzier,
Right.
and
Darker.
Yeah, darker, and so some optics are lose less than others, and you can think of it like resolution. And so I've noticed that as well. My Vortex didn't hold up nearly as well as my current Steiner.
Oh yeah.
But that was, an $800 Vortex versus a $2,000 Steiner. I've never looked through one of the $2,000 Vortexes before, so I'm sure they do a lot better as well. But that's just something I noticed, jumping from that, I guess, that class of optic. I know that was a big thing I noticed, was it had a better picture at the higher magnification for sure.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Even like my Bushnell that I have, I've got the HDMR. I think it's 3.5 by 21. Now that one, I haven't noticed like any real diminishment of quality at 21x, but I think that's just because you're not, like, if you look at your Vortex, at 21, it's probably still pretty good. But once you get to the 24, it kind of darkened, I noticed. This one, I don't think it has quite enough magnification to really get you to that, where it appears to be darkening, So, take it as you will. The quality is really good. I'm really pleased with it. I have no complaints with it. But yeah, so.
Yeah, be aware. There is definitely not all scopes are made equal, and the glass quality is a big part of that. And you can do a little research and find that Germany's known for making a lot of glass. Japan has,
China,
and the Philippines. They've been producing a lot of glass for a long time for like camera lenses, as well as optics for military, such as scopes and I know companies like Nikon. They've been making, they've probably been making glass for military they probably started over 100 years ago making binoculars and different things like that. So there's a lot of people that are making glass, have been doing it for a long time, and they've really refined those processes.
So what places, Jace, make the best quality glass, would you say?
I don't know. I mean, I always hear great things from like German glass. People seem to really brag them up with companies like Zeiss and Steiner and Schneider. Schneider's another German glass brand. And I know there's a bunch more. I just can't think of them off the top of my head, but they've just been in the game for a long time, and that I know some of the camera lenses that I use for my job, they're film camera lenses, and the glass elements in them are treated for like 6 months inside of whatever they're building them in, but to smooth them out, it takes about 6 months of whatever process they use to get them to basically near perfection. But then one of these lenses costs $11,000, so that goes to show you the difference in what glass quality can do to your price range. So thank goodness scopes don't cost $11,000 for a good one.
Not seen one yet. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm sure there's probably
not out there, but
I know, like the tracking point.
Oh yeah.
I can't remember what it comes at, but it's
that's more machine though than scope.
That's true.
Yeah.
I think another big thing to consider.
Do we want to talk about China and their glass?
I don't know much about Chinese glass.
Well, I've kind of researched that topic a little bit, so I'll just kind of share what I found out.
It's communist glass.
Yeah, yeah. So definitely, it's the lower end, if not the lowest end of glass that you can see. Yeah, I know. A lot of cheaper scopes are definitely going to have glass that's made in China. Now that doesn't not necessarily though mean that it's just always bad. If you're looking for a real inexpensive scope that will still get you out there, but you're not going to drop $1,000 or $2,000 or $3,000 on a scope. There are some brands. Primary Arms kind of comes to mind that use Chinese made glass and use it very well, and it works really well. I actually own 2 scopes from Primary Arms that I've always been way happy with the glass, and it's stood up to use and abuse. So but that'll come with the kind of the company that you get it from. I know Bushnell makes their higher end stuff comes from Japan, and that's really real good glass, good quality. And when you look through like the Chinese made glass and the any other place made glass, Japan or Germany or whatever, you can definitely see a difference. In all the things that we talked about earlier, clarity and resolution and all that, brightness. But is it a visible image? And can I use it? And will it, is it better than iron sights? Yes, definitely across the board. All those, definitely. So, for those types of applications, if you're really on a budget and maybe you're just getting into long-range shooting, this is the Long-Range Noob podcast, so, a lot of our listeners might not have $1,000 to drop on a scope. Definitely do your research and check out some of those cheaper made, glass companies. And I think, you can still be happy with them.
Yeah, no doubt. I also think any company that makes multiple tiers of glass and scopes in terms of price, I think most of them have, like Vortex, for instance. I think some of their lower end, they may get. I think most of their glass comes from the Philippines, but I think that some of their lower stuff may very well come from somewhere like China. I don't know for sure, but I do know that most manufacturers offer lower ends, and don't be fooled in thinking that it's going to be as good as their high end stuff, because it won't be.
No.
It's cheap for a reason. But like Ryan's saying, you very well. It could totally work for you in whatever your application is. I just bought for my AR a 1x4 Vortex Crossfire 2, and I love it. It costs $150. It was on sale, and
yeah, I looked through it, mounted to his rifle, and I was impressed, actually.
Yeah, it looks fine. I was able to get on target at about 500 yards, 450, 500 yards. On a steel plate that is... How big is that steel plate?
It's 19 tall and 11 wide.
Okay, I always want to say 18 by 10, but 19 by 11. So about the size of the chest, human chest, I would say. A little, smaller, like the vitals. But, yeah, I mean, it's awesome. And that was $150 when I easily could have spent $800 on something that... I definitely don't need, but probably wouldn't even use that much.
Sure.
So you just got to weigh, just like everything when it comes to this sport and this hobby, is there's so many applications, so many things. You just got to really decide what's best for you.
Yeah.
And that can be hard. It's easy to just say, I want to get the best this and the best that, and I got to have high end this, or else I won't be able to do as good as I want to. But the truth is there's people out there. The biggest hurdle is you. The gear far surpasses all of our abilities for the most part. I mean, unless you're doing it a lot, the biggest thing you can work on is yourself. And I've noticed a huge improvement in my own skills in just a year of doing this.
Yeah,
and so
really focused.
Yeah,
shooting.
It's just my mentality's changed. My confidence is
grown, definitely.
It's definitely grown, and my abilities have definitely. But I still feel like I'm miles behind my own gear. You know, my optics, my guns, my rounds, everything's shooting better than I am, and so I think people worry about their gear more than themselves when it should be the other way around.
Yeah, that just not to get off topic again, but Nuttin' Fancy on YouTube, he actually just did a video, and he did a 1 mile run just fully geared out, with his tactical
awful.
loadout. Yeah, and he's like, a lot of people stress about, this little ounce here and this little ounce there on your gun or your vest, or and he has kind of a tactical loadout, and so all these little ounces that people stress about, but then they're like 30-40 pounds overweight.
It's true, yeah.
And it's just you stress about those things on your gear, but you gotta, I think, take and I'm not really one to talk. I definitely could lose a little bit of the fluff. Jace is pretty good, but I could use a little fluff.
We've all got the fluff.
Oh yeah, so yeah, sometimes stress about yourself maybe more than your gear. Am I up to
Yeah,
this
I've never thought of
challenge?
that, and that's a great point. And I actually haven't watched a ton of Nuttin' Fancy stuff, but everything I have seen I really like. And he's just a very straightforward guy, kind of a no BS kind of guy. So anyone who likes watching YouTube videos, especially on the topic of guns and shooting, I definitely recommend checking out Nuttin' Fancy. So I think it's NUTN.
Yeah,
Fancy.
I believe so. Mm-hmm.
So if you search that, you'll be able to find it. But very. It seems like very non-biased information, and I really appreciate that. So
definitely. So so we got off topic a little there.
No, so that was good. That was good.
Yeah.
Let's. I know we're pushing our. Ryan's got a softball game he's got to get to.
Yeah.
And so we're gonna push through this.
Yeah, let's do it.
We've talked about most of the stuff I wanted to talk about already. Let's talk a little bit about.
Well, we're kind of on glass. Do you want to hit up parallax?
Yes. So, parallax on, and I don't know if they only put it on models that have a lot of variable zoom. I know
it seems to be,
and basically all it is it puts the image that you're seeing and your reticle on the same plane. So when you start to zoom in really far, you'll start to get a blurry image, and so parallax adjustment allows for basically it puts your reticle, or it puts the plane of focus where your reticle's at or where you're looking. So if your target's at 500 yards, you're looking downrange, your parallax is set to 100 yards, your 500 yards is going to be blurry. It works much like focus in on a camera. Mm-hmm. So you roll your parallax knob over to around the 500, and it's something you learn quickly is it's not dead on your knob. They've got numbers there, but those are more for reference. So don't be alarmed if your 500 yard is more like 600 or 700 on the knob. It's not a big deal. You just want to get it to where it's focused, and the way you can test, not just if the image is blurry or not, but when you get it set to where you think it should be, just move your head around just ever so slightly and see if your reticle moves around on your target, because it should not move. No matter if you're looking at your scope from kind of a high angle or a low angle or left or right, your reticle should stay right on the bullseye or whatever you're aiming at. If your parallax is off, it's going to move around.
Just a little bit.
Just a little bit, yeah. But it's enough to...
But that can, throw your shot.
Yeah, 500 yards or beyond, that could be definitely the difference between a hit and a miss. And then if you're shooting groups at 100 yards and your parallax is off, that could be a difference between a 2-inch group and a 1-inch group. So that's just something to be aware of, especially if you're going from a non-parallax scope to a scope that has parallax. You want to get in the habit of always adjusting that, because many times I've started to shoot and then I realized, oh, my parallax is set to a completely different yardage than what I'm shooting at. So definitely something to keep in mind. And then something I wanted to hit real quick was mounting options. Okay. Ryan, you kind of turned me on to the quick detachment types.
Oh, yeah.
Do you want to talk about like American Defense and any others that you like to use?
Oh, sure. Yeah. I've got a couple American Defense mounts, and they are basically a kind of a one-piece mount, that the rings kind of clamp onto. But then the whole mount really has like a latch, or a couple latches, maybe 2 latches, and you can unlatch those, and the whole thing comes right off. So that way, if you have, a couple ARs, or if you want, maybe you don't really want just this scope to stay with this gun, you want to move it from one to the other, back again, you can, it'll keep your zero basically the same, and as long as you mount it into the same slot each time. Kind of like an EOTech or a red dot, kind of the same
idea
thing there. Yeah, same idea. Yeah, versus just your regular rings, which you can they might be a little harder. A lot of times they take a special tool, like a hex wrench, or what is that, a Allen wrench?
Allen, yeah.
Yeah, an Allen wrench, or a star wrench perhaps, with the little star shape on there.
Oh, a Torx.
Yes, a Torx. That's the official.
A star shape, whatever.
That's why we keep him around.
Yeah, I study the different labels of
wrenches.
Of wrenches and
I just like the one that
hardware.
Works. So, yeah. Sometimes, it can make it a little easier to remove and attach your optics, maybe to different platforms, with a detachable mount.
I've been very pleased with mine, and I only have right now just that I have my AR and my Tikka 260 with me, and then my 22 and my shotgun and some of my other rifles are rifles that I've used are down at my parents' house a couple hours away. But it's cool to just be able to pop your optic off really quick and switch it over. I threw it onto my AR one day just for fun. I would never run that kind of a optic on my little AR-15, but I threw it on there just to give it a go, and it's just so easy. It's a Picatinny style rail on both my rifle and my AR, so yeah, it makes it easy to just swap it over, and I could see where it really come in to play if someone owned multiple rifles.
Yeah, and you didn't want to. I mean, maybe you want to spend, $2,000 on one really good optic, and just use that across the board.
Yeah, spend a big chunk of money on, $2,000-$3,000 on a really, really nice optic, and then maybe you just have one, because I doubt you're going to go out dual wielding rifles and shooting them at the same time. So
yeah,
if you want to shoot both your rifles or 3 rifles at the range, you can bring them and just swap your scope, and just at that point you'd probably have already tested out to see where you needed to adjust your zero for each one. But
you can write that down somewhere, how many clicks you need to move.
Exactly. So it takes a little extra. It's not as easy as just pulling it out of the gun cabinet. But I think that's a smarter solution, unless you can afford really good glass on all of your rifles. I think that's a smarter solution than having 3 rifles with semi-okay, 3 different semi-decent scopes. I'd rather just combine three $800 scopes and buy a $2,500 optic, and then put it in a quick detach mount and have it set up to where I can just swap it in between rifles.
Yeah, because then you're using your nicest, scope on whatever platform you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So,
that makes sense to me. I'm sure there's some people out there who want different types of scopes on different guns, but for me personally, if I've got a 5 to 25 scope, that's going to be good for any of my applications that I can foresee. And and I just think I'd rather use it on all my guns than a $400 or $500 scope on different guns. So
yeah. Now like me, I do have a real nice scope, that Bushnell on the on my bolt gun, but I do have a couple primary arms scopes on other my 20-inch AR-15 rifle, the kind of the DMR rifle. It has my old scope from the my original 308 shooting, that I did in episode, I think 1 through 3 or 4, something like that. So yeah, that got a hand me down. And I'm totally fine with that. They both have quick detachable mounts on them, and so if I ever want to use the nice magnification on that AR, I can just pop off the primary arm scope, the 4x14x, and pop on the nice Bushnell. So I'm happy with that too. So I mean, yeah. So I'm happy. But,
Ryan's happy.
But every just do whatever you feel like
just
you want.
Just do whatever you want. We don't care.
Yeah, we don't care.
Mount a spoon on the top of your gun, for all we care. Just whatever you want to do.
Yeah. So, but there's some options. It's always good to have options.
There's definitely options.
And I've been doing this for years and years, and so it just kind of collects after a while.
Yeah.
So
yes.
Yeah.
Ryan the professional.
But
we're gonna do a lightning round real quick, since I know we're trying to wrap this up. We're just gonna go over the last couple of things I want to talk about real quick. A couple more things to consider. Reticles. There are seemingly an endless amount of these, and they're important for sure. So if you're just doing some hunting, and you don't need a fancy reticle, then the simple crosshair will probably do fine for most people. If you're listening to this podcast, chances are you're into the long range stuff, and you might want to lean towards reticles that have some different uses. A lot of them will have different ways to measure your targets in minutes of angle or mil dots, which we've talked about in a previous episode. Which MOA versus mil dots are just two different ways to measure angle, and so they're both angular measurements. And like for instance, Ryan has a reticle called the Horus reticle, which is just this big tree of.
It's almost like a graph.
Yeah, it's like a graph. The lower half of his reticle is almost like a piece of graph paper with nodes on it. Each one, are they in mils?
They're in mils.
So the advantage to this is Ryan can get on target, take a shot. If he misses, he can pick out exactly where he missed and know he can either dial it or he can just hold over. He can just move the
on that
target to where he missed, and he's going to make a hit on his next shot.
Yeah, and with the graph of the Horus reticle, when you miss that first shot, if you miss, you hopefully you hit, but if you miss, we're gonna hope for a hit there, but hopefully you called your windage and your elevation and distance and all that. So, wherever that bullet lands, if you can see it, usually right around it there will be some sort of marking, a place on that graph or a reference point. And then you can just move that reference point to your target, and then take that for your next shot, and you'll be most likely a hit, if not a lot closer.
Yeah.
Depending on your distance and the wind and the changing effects, and you have to kind of make that call. but you know, I don't know. It really helps out with determining where your bullet's going.
Yeah,
So.
and I would say the horse reticle is designed mostly for those who do not want to dial. They want to make a shot, reference it, and be able to quickly make an adjustment in their reticle, a holdover, and take the next shots. And then other reticles, some are standard crosshair with mill dots, so you can see your different mills, and all these reference points are used so that you can do holdovers. And what we mean by that is you're not putting the target right in the center of your crosshair because you know that you're not going to hit there for whatever reason. Maybe your scope is completely maxed out on dialing up, and so you need to hold over your target in order to hit it. And so it really helps to have some subtensions, little lines, or some numbers that designate extra holdover.
You kind of have a Christmas tree.
I did on my Vortex.
On your Vortex.
Yeah, so right. My Vortex had a Christmas tree style, so you had the cross in the middle, which is like your standard kind of
like the star of the Christmas tree.
And then kind of the star, and then below that it just kind of fanned out as it got lower and lower. And I really liked that. I thought that was a cool reticle. The one I have now is kind of a hybrid in between that and like a standard just crosshair. It's got different subtensions for the windage, the left and right, and the holdovers on the up and down, and it's just really easy to see and count your mills to measure, if you've got a miss or if you need to just make a 5 mile per hour wind holdover, and you know what 5 miles per hour is going to do to your round because you've went out and shot your gun a bunch and you have your dope all written down, and so you know what a 5 or 10 mile an hour wind's going to do, and you know exactly how many mils you need to hold for that. And so reticles are vast, and there's a lot of them out there. So don't be afraid. One thing I would caution is to not be afraid of the busier looking ones, because even though they look busy, when you're looking through them, it's not bad. I know with Ryan's, with the horse reticle, it's probably the busiest there is out there that I know of.
Yeah.
Yet,
but
I think it's nice, and the top half of your picture is clean.
Yeah.
It's the bottom half that's going to have these markings, and when you're looking through it, just the way the brain processes an image through an optic, it really fills everything in.
You're really focused. Yeah. You're really focused on really that one little reference point, really, or that holdover point, and so really the rest of it doesn't really matter, when you're actually there in the moment.
Yeah.
So when you're looking at it, on a sheet of paper, or
like on a website or
on a
website,
like that. Oh, that looks, I don't know
so
how I'd
busy.
ever see anything through there, but when you actually get to it, your focus is just so much on that point that the rest of it just kind of disappears into the background. And you just have, this is where I need to be.
Yeah.
And then you
can
line that up and
that's the
take
piece
shot.
of information I'd give is I wouldn't be afraid to at least go and check something out. And don't be afraid of it being busy, because it can be very useful. And just the real world application is going to be different than just checking it out online or something. And then finally,
I did want to talk about BDC, bullet drop compensation.
Oh yeah, go ahead. You have an optic.
Yeah, I've got a couple of those.
Yeah, I've never had one.
My two primary arms scopes that I have. One's a 1x6, and then the other is the 4x14 primary arms, and they're both ACSS reticles, and they're basically, it's specific for this round, so it's specific for a 223 or a 308, which it has a very similar trajectory. Both of those bullets, and so basically it's it knows that, or at least it knows that most AR-15 bullets they will all kind of fly to the same path, and so it automatically for a bullet drop compensation, it'll automatically put lines that this line is 100 yards. This line is 200 yards, 300 yards, 400 yards, 500, and so on. And it figures that from like math, the
Math.
just the math, yeah, just your basic trajectory. So for a quick and easy shot, that might be useful.
Now,
is it accurate every time? No.
No, they're really
been in
dependent on the weight of the bullet and the speed, right?
Yeah, and the speed.
Like you got to make sure you're matching that.
Yeah, well, and your ballistic coefficient, obviously. So all three of those things, are gonna.
So when you buy one of the
play a
BDC, or is that what it is, BDC?
Yeah,
ballistic
BDC,
drop
bullet
compensator,
drop,
or bullet drop.
bullet drop
Does it
compensation.
tell you the exact load that it's calibrated for?
Yes, often there will be like a chart,
Oh, okay.
and you can like look up your round, and a lot of the times it'll say, if you have this round and you've got this, if this is what you're shooting, adjust your zero to this place.
Mm-hmm.
It'll tell you where you should adjust your zero.
Gotcha.
But I mean, I shoot, especially with AR-15, I shoot, whatever's on the shelf that I can just pull off, Walmart or Cabela's or, so I don't definitely stick with one round or one load. Most of them are all 55 hollow points, 55 grain
That's
hollow
true.
points. But
It's not. At least it's not hard to find that if you're looking for it.
yeah, and so they might all have a little bit different, of where it's going to be, but it's going to be close, So for precision shooting, I would not rely on a BDC, bullet drop compensator. You're going to want to
Either dial or hold over.
Yeah, dial or hold over to what
to a specific.
What is going to be for that particular bullet and coming out of that gun. So, I mean, BDCs are just quick and dirty, is how I would tell or how I'd describe it. If you want any amount of real precision, you're going to want to use dialing or hold over.
Yeah, you're basically going to want to use your real world
in your data.
Your real world data that you've collected by just going out and shooting. Your ballistic apps and different things can get you really close, especially if you've got like a Kestrel and you've got all your atmospherics and you've got your bullet speed from a chronograph. If you've got everything like that, they'll get you really, really close. But nothing beats real world data. And that's also the good news is if you don't have a Kestrel or you don't have a chronograph, just go out and shoot at 100, 200, 300, and so on, and find out where you need to dial your scope to hit, and then write it down, and then at that load, that's what you need to do. And that will change, of course, as atmospherics and different things change. But that's just, every time you go out and shoot, if you can, keep a little diary and try to keep as much information as you can written down, and that's the best way you can build your dope up. So one of the last things I wanted to hit on real quick are turrets, and these are fancy little knobs on the top of your scopes that allow you to dial in your
dope.
Dial in your dope. So they basically come in a couple different flavors, and that's either exposed or not exposed. Some scopes are kind of just a set screw that you got to use a screwdriver to change your drop, your up and down. Usually windage is always a knob.
Oh, okay.
But some of the older scopes that I've used, just the top, you had to unscrew a cap and then use a little screwdriver, a penny or a quarter or something to move your reticle up or down. With long range stuff, it's becoming almost required that you have an exposed turret or a turret. Sometimes, like the Crossfire I bought for my AR, it's got caps that you have to unscrew, but underneath it, it's got turrets that you can just twist with your fingers. And then on both Ryan's Bushnell and my Steiner, and just about any other high-end scope, it's just got a exposed turret that is always ready to be turned on. So
yeah,
super handy.
Yeah. it makes those adjustments much quicker. Obviously, that's what they're kind of shooting for. Mine in particular has a kind of a knob that you pull up or to dial, and then when you make your dial, you can push it down, and then that locks it in place, so you're not bumping it or moving it in any way, and it's gonna stay in place.
Yeah,
that's a feature of the Bushnell.
There's definitely some features to look for.
Oh yeah, I really like Jace's. Do you want to tell them about your turret? I think it's just the most amazing thing I've ever seen.
Oh, I know what you're talking about. First, I just want to mention that some things you can look for are like zero stops, and that is to dial back down to your zero. Some scopes have where they'll stop either at zero or really close to zero, and then you can just go, and then you've bottomed out, and then you can come back up however many clicks to get back. My Vortex just had shims, metal shims that you put inside once you got your zero, and then you put shims in to prevent you from going past your zero too far. So then I didn't get lost, so I always knew where I was at, and if I had a question, I could just dial it down and know exactly where my zero is at, because you don't want to lose track, because a lot of these turrets will make multiple revolutions. On mine, the feature Ryan's talking about, I got a really low profile turret on the top of my Steiner. A lot of turrets are kind of tall, and as you screw them one way or the other, as you dial up, a lot of times they'll come up even higher. Mine's just kind of a little pancake, and when you make one revolution, you can see numbers through these little windows all the way around the turret, and when you go from 12 mils to 13, all the numbers in the windows change, so it doesn't have to lift up, it doesn't have to do anything, it stays low profile, and just the numbers inside the windows change to let you know where you're at, which is a really easy way to track where you've dialed. You don't have to look for hash marks or numbers that are small or hard to read. You know exactly where you're at when you dial, so very handy.
Yeah, it's this little mechanical feature in there. It just, I don't know.
It's magic.
It's almost like it's almost magic. Yes, it's kind of like almost like the old style flipping clocks. Before they had digital clocks. How the numbers would flip.
It's like a physical number in there that you see.
Flips, and it's the craziest thing. So if anyone's interested, go check out a Steiner. What is it, Jace?
It's the Steiner T5XI or TX5i. I mixed that up. But
really interesting turret, and the little window that's in there that shows you.
I definitely.
Which mill you're on.
I think some of the big hitters, real quick. Vortex makes some really great glass. Bushnell has high-end glass. They also make a lot of low-end cheap stuff. So don't be confused with that, because they do make some very high-grade quality stuff.
Night Force.
Night Force is a big one. Night Force glass is amazing. Schmidt and Bender is known for basically only making high. I don't think they have cheap glass. Steiner, I really like what I've got. Collis, which is a brand that's been around for a long, long time. I've been noticing they're kind of making some waves recently. And it's spelled Khales, so it kind of looks like Kales. But it's pronounced Collis. And it's another German manufacturer. They've been making glass for a long, long, long time, but they haven't really been making it for long-range application, but they just started to in the last year and a half. And I listened to an interview with their head of US whatever, and I was impressed, very impressed with what they had to say. So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps it up for optics. Ladies and gentlemen,
that's about it.
So we will be back sooner than later.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.